to plan. Again, Cygnus launched back on September the 18th. It arrived up at the station on September 29th, and we're looking at footage from earlier this morning as it was actually unberthed and detached from the International Space Station. Again, that time was 5:05 a.m. Central Time, the official time, 6:05 a.m. Eastern Time, as Cygnus backed away slowly from the International Space Station. The crew at the control included Luca Parmitano and Karen Nyberg helping him. These are the exact same two crew members that actually installed Cygnus back at the end of last month. And they were fulfilling those roles again today as they looked on from the space station's cupola and piloted this robotic arm and moved Cygnus back away from the orbiting complex. All the systems have been checked out. The teams here in Houston all set to go. The Orbital Sciences team up in Dulles, Virginia, also set to go for this morning's activities. There will be a final go, no-go poll coming up here shortly, but everything is looking good in terms of Cygnus and the International Space Station. The crew should be ready to go here shortly. What they're doing is simply just waiting for lighting conditions. Right now, the space station is in the dark as it flies high above the Pacific Ocean, but they are waiting for sunrise to come in about 14 minutes. And then once the folks can see Cygnus out there on the end of the arm, we should be good to go. So we're at least coming up in about 26 minutes. It is due to happen at 6:30 a.m. Central Time, and then Cygnus will be on its way. Now, this release is going to work slightly differently than other vehicles, such as the SpaceX Dragon or the Japanese HTV cargo craft. What it will do is once the crew releases Cygnus and begins to back the arm away, when the arm is 1.5 meters away, the crew will actually send a command to Cygnus using what is known as the HTV control panel. This is the same panel that they used for the Japanese HTV cargo craft. It is the same panel that they used whenever Cygnus arrived at the space station. It is normally housed in the Kibo laboratory, but they use a pretty long cord to stretch that control box down into the cupola, which of course is in a different part of the station. You're seeing sort of the layout of the robotics workstation here. But that HTV control panel will be used to send an abort command to Cygnus. You may hear them say the word abort in the communications up to the crew or the crew down to the ground. That does not mean anything is going not according to plan, but that is the command they will send to the vehicle once the arm is 1.5 meters away to actually signal it to begin the process of firing its jets. So once that happens, Cygnus will perform that abort maneuver using these small 7-pound thrusters that are called REA thrusters on the outside of the vehicle to begin the process of backing away from the station. Now, because this happens this way, you may notice that Cygnus may move at a little bit of a quicker clip than what we're used to seeing with normal vehicles, which is usually a fairly slow process. This may be a bit faster than what we're typically used to seeing here on the air, but everything is... Assuming everything goes according to plan, Cygnus should be able to back away from the station. It'll actually move down and in front of the station first. What that will do is allow it to swing up in front of the station after it gets outside of the keep-out sphere, and then ultimately fly over the top of the station and then continue to drift away. So again, once that abort command is sent, Cygnus will sort of move down and in front of the station, and then ultimately it will swing up in front and then over the back of the top of the station as it continues to increase its distance. So here in the room, the flight director, Courtney McMillan. She is doing her go, no-go poll of everybody in the room to make sure that everybody's ready and set to support this release coming up in just a few minutes. She, of course, was the flight director that was on console during the arrival of Cygnus. She and her team worked for more than 2 years to plan for this mission, and all this comes to a close today. Sitting beside her is astronaut Katie Coleman. She is the Capcom. She herself, of course, is extremely familiar with the International Space Station and robotics operations. Sitting beside her is Ricky Arnold. Arnold, also an astronaut, will actually be the Capcom for the first full-up Orbital Sciences Cygnus mission, which is coming up just a few short weeks from now. So everything all set here. The go, no-go poll is now complete, so everything on track for the release coming up at 6:30. Of course, Orbital Sciences is one of the two companies participating in NASA's Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Program. This program was began back in 2006 once NASA began planning for the end of the space shuttles and that loss of cargo capability. The agency took a look at how to spin up a private commercial capability to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. The first company to join back in 2006 was SpaceX with its Falcon 9 rocket and, of course, the Dragon cargo vehicle that flew a series of test flights and began flying regular cargo missions to the International Space Station last year. Cygnus and Orbital Sciences joined back in 2008, about 2 years after SpaceX, and are now following about a year behind. And at the conclusion of this mission, it'll take just a few weeks for NASA program managers here in Houston and up in Washington to take a look at all the different milestones that Orbital Sciences and Cygnus needed to accomplish during this mission. There were 10 milestones that the vehicle needed to perform during this mission. Everything went off without a hitch. It moved very smoothly the morning of rendezvous and docking with the space station. So they're going to take a look at that final data package, and once that is done, Orbital Sciences should have all of its COTS milestones complete. It will basically graduate the program, and then it will be flying a real full-up cargo mission coming up toward the end of this year. And at that point, NASA will have two fully operational cargo vehicles flying from the United States. Of course, those two vehicles will join the Japanese HTV, which also docks with the International Space Station's U.S. segment. The European Automated Transfer Vehicle, ATV, which currently there is one on the back end of the station, the Albert Einstein, which is getting ready to depart the station in just a few short days. We also have the Progress vehicles, of course, that have been flying for years from the Russians. They dock with the Russian segment. And, of course, the SpaceX Dragon itself. So quite a number of different vehicles flying up to this International Space Station, and quite a number of the docking ports currently being used on the outside of the complex. But for now, we are taking a look at this live view as the space station flies high above the Pacific Ocean. The actual release should be taking some place above South America if it occurs on time, just as soon as the sun comes up, and highlights both the space station and Cygnus. And the lighting conditions are acceptable, and then the crew will be given the go to actually release. Courtney McMillan, the flight director here in Mission Control, is notifying the Orbital Sciences team up in Dulles that Houston is go for the release of the vehicle coming up in less than 20 minutes at 6:30 a.m. Central Time. the orbital team also go. So we will stand by, wait for the sun to rise, and watch this vehicle bid farewell to the International Space Station. That arm is fully extended out to the release position. So both the space station and Cygnus are all set mechanically. The crew will be given the go here momentarily. And again, Luca Parmitano and Karen Nyberg will actually release Cygnus from the arm. They will hit the abort command on the HTV command panel. It's a small box that they will basically have there in the cupola with them, and that'll send the signal to Cygnus to, once the arm is 1.5 meters away, that'll send the signal to Cygnus to fire its jets and begin the process of moving away from the station.
Station Houston, space to ground 2.
Go ahead, Kitty.
Luca, we are still looking good for an 11:30 release. We'll take the rest of step 2 in your robotics procedure, 1.320.
Copy, new work.
So Katie Coleman notifying the crew that we are still go for release. She called out 11:30. That's actually GMT time, because that's the time that mission control in the space station operates on. So it'll be 6:30 here in Texas. There's a series of burns that Cygnus will be performing as it backs away from the station, opens up the distance, and also gets ready for its fiery plunge tomorrow. There's 2 significant burns that will take place tomorrow morning. The first one is at 8:06 a.m. Central Time, 9:06 a.m. Eastern Time. That'll be the first of 2 burns that will begin the process of lowering Cygnus's altitude down toward the Earth's atmosphere. And then the final deorbit burn will occur at 12:41 p.m. Central Time, or 1:41 p.m. Eastern Time. So again, the first burn to lower the altitude of Cygnus tomorrow will take place at 8:06 a.m. Central Time, 9:06 a.m. Eastern. And then the final deorbit burn will occur at 12:41 p.m. or 1:41 p.m. Eastern Time. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Orbital Sciences did christen this vehicle the G. David Low. Low was an astronaut here at NASA, flew several different missions. He went on to become an executive at Orbital Sciences and was sort of one of the visionaries behind Orbital Sciences participating in NASA's COTS program. He passed away back in 2008, but his family was on hand to see the launch of this vehicle and the spacecraft that proudly bore his name. During our live coverage of Cygnus arriving at the station, we did talk to astronaut Shannon Lucid, of course a longtime friend of us here at NASA, former astronaut as well. She flew one of those space shuttle missions with Low. And it was sort of fortuitous because the mission that they flew just did a ton of science. I mean, just several different experiments that would go on to sort of be the foreshadowers of experiments that take place on board the International Space Station, the very vehicle that this spacecraft is currently attached to. So if you did not see that interview, just log on to youtube.com/realnasa, REEL NASA. That's youtube.com/realnasa, and Shannon's interview is there, and it's very interesting to hear her talk about her former crewmate and also get an update on what she's been up to since she did retire here a couple of years ago.
Station Houston for Cygnus.
Go ahead.
Karen, we're ready for step 1 on the Cygnus departure monitoring card, your 1602. Step 1.
Okay. I can confirm that the HCP lights are as expected, and the vehicle light, we see the tracking lights and the red and green.
Copy all. Station, Houston for Cygnus.
Go ahead.
Karen, let me reiterate the window to y'all. The window is for release is no earlier than 11:30, and this release window closes at 12:05. With that said, you are go for Cygnus release, and that's go for steps 3.2 through 5 in your 1.320.
Okay, copy. Understand we are go for Cygnus to release no earlier than 11:30, starting in step 3.2.
Good readback. We will be watching.
This is Mission Control Houston. Again, the crew has been given the go to release Cygnus coming up in just a few short minutes, about 10 minutes from now. That is the beginning of the opening of the window. As you can see, the sun beginning to rise as Cygnus and the space station fly high above the Pacific Ocean, about to make a pass over South America. But everything all set. All the mechanical systems ready to support. The crew is ready to support both the ground teams here in Houston and up in Dulles, Virginia. Also ready for Cygnus to be released coming up here shortly. Just to reiterate how this works, the crew will back the arm away once the release takes place. Once that arm is 1.5 meters away, they will send an abort command using what they call the HTV control panel. You'll hear them refer to it as the HCP, and you may hear them actually say the word abort over the air. Now, this is not to be unexpected. This is part of the process for Cygnus backing away from the vehicle. Does not mean that something's gone wrong, but they will send that abort command, and we'll confirm that whenever the arm is 1.5 meters away. That will allow Cygnus to fire some 7-pound thrusters to begin the process of opening up the distance between the space station and the spacecraft itself. It'll be moving sort of down and in front of the International Space Station and basically just doing a loop. Once it sort of gets out of the keep-out sphere, which is 200 meters away from the space station, it will come up in front of the station and then up over the top, and then we'll back away fairly rapidly at that point. We will stay on the air here on NASA TV until we lose visual contact and can't really see the vehicle anymore. And as we also said at the beginning, this vehicle should move away at a pretty rapid clip. Sometimes these operations are fairly slow. It's not like the movies, but we should be able to watch this here in just a few minutes and see just exactly how fast Cygnus does back away as we continue to watch along. If Cygnus looks like the other parts of the U.S. segment of the space station, that is not by accident. It was actually built by one of the manufacturers that not only built parts of the U.S. segment, but also some of what used to be known as the multi-purpose logistics modules, or MPLMs. Those big cargo carriers flew inside the space shuttle payload bay, just took up tons of supplies as the space station was being constructed and the crews were living on board. So it does sort of look very familiar. But Cygnus is 5.1 meters by 3.05 meters in size. So it's fairly large. It can carry up to 1,700 kilograms, or about 3,700 pounds of cargo. This is the beginning version of Cygnus. There will be an enhanced version that will fly later missions that will take up to 2,700 kilograms, or about 5,952 pounds. And as we mentioned, this one brought up about 1,300 pounds of supplies for the Expedition 37 crew. That's a 589 kilograms. It's taking home quite a bit more. It's taking home 1,293 kilograms, which is about 2,850 pounds. Continuing to watch as Cygnus and the space station fly high above the Pacific Ocean, about to cross over the southern tip of South America in just a few minutes. Some stunning video we're getting this morning. Of course, that does make up for the lack of video that we were unfortunate not to have back whenever Cygnus arrived at the station, but we'll take it this morning. As we mentioned, Orbital Sciences will fly the flight that's known as Orbital 1. That'll be the first full-up cargo mission up to the International Space Station in just a few short weeks. That vehicle has actually already been loaded with the cargo, the initial cargo load that will fly on that mission. So preparations will continue over the next several weeks, and then we will see Cygnus once again up at the International Space Station toward the end of this year. A little bit less than 2.5 minutes until the release of Cygnus. We're standing by. You can see the southern parts of South America coming into view. There's some lakes. This window opens up at 6:30 a.m. Central Time. As we talked about, they're just waiting for the proper lighting constraints. I mean, the sun is up, as you can see. But what they want to do is basically wait until the sun is sort of at high noon, for lack of a better word. They wait until it's sort of out of the view of the station's cameras and the astronauts themselves. Sort of like driving into the sunset, if you can imagine that here on Earth. So once the sun is in the proper position, they will release Cygnus here in just about a minute and a half. The robotics officer here in Mission Control confirming that the crew is getting ready to release here in just a few minutes. And the release window is now open. We're standing by. The crew is beginning to unlatch the arm from Cygnus. All the latches have been released. The arm is continuing to go through the process of letting go of Cygnus. Standing by. And release confirmed at 6:31 a.m. Central Time as these two vehicles were high above the Atlantic Ocean, just to the east of Argentina. Again, Cygnus has been released by the crew of Expedition 37. Expedition 37 crew now backing the arm away from the Orbital Sciences Cygnus spacecraft. Release confirmed at 6:31 a.m. Central Time. Once again, the two vehicles were high above the Atlantic Ocean, just to the east of Argentina.
Houston, abort is armed.
Copy, armed.
Abort commanded.
Copy, commanded.
Karen Nyberg has sent the abort command to Cygnus. This will signal its engines to begin firing to move it away from the International Space Station. The arm now at 1.5 meters away from the spacecraft.
Station Houston, Cygnus departures in progress. Continue to monitor departure. That's steps 2 through 4 and 1602.
Copy that.
So Cygnus bids farewell to the International Space Station. It has been up there close to a month after arriving at the end of September. This test mission is rapidly coming to a close, as Cygnus is due for a destructive re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere tomorrow. This test flight went pretty much without any sort of hiccups at all. There were some challenges in the beginning, but of course, those are to be expected during any sort of test flight. But once Cygnus got up to the International Space Station, everything went extremely smooth, as all the different 10 milestones that Cygnus needed to accomplish during this test flight were accomplished in rapid succession. The crew was able to capture Cygnus, attach it to the station, open up the hatches, and unload it of all the different cargo that it brought up on this test flight. They packed it full of trash and other items that they no longer need, sealed the hatches yesterday, and released it this morning, and sent it toward the end of its mission, which will occur tomorrow afternoon. NASA managers will now take a look at this flight over the next few weeks, and then once everything is signed off on, Orbital Sciences should receive the final payments as part of its agreement with NASA as the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program for Orbital Sciences and also COTS as a whole gets ready to come to a close. And after that takes place, we will officially have 2 companies in the United States flying regular cargo missions up to the International Space Station. Of course, Orbital Sciences does join SpaceX with its Dragon spacecraft, delivering supplies to all the different expedition crews on board the International Space Station. Cygnus there on the horizon, sort of disappearing back behind the Cubeau laboratory. Here's a view of it from the end of the station's arm. This vehicle's rapidly approaching the keep-out sphere. This is an imaginary circle around the International Space Station. And the team here confirming that we have passed that 200-meter point, so Cygnus is now outside of the keep-out sphere.
Station Houston, Cygnus has exited the 200-meter keep-out sphere.
Copy.
Station Houston, Cygnus has completed its departure burn. You are go to maneuver the SSRMS in step 6 of 1.320. Nice work today.
Copy that.
So station, this is Luke on 2.
Go right ahead, Luca.
This is just to thank all the people that worked and everybody that gave me this opportunity to work with this machine. It was a real pleasure to work both with Cygnus and with all the people that were involved.
Luca, it's been a great mission. We're really happy to have worked with you and your crew on this and the Orbital Sciences team. It's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work, a lot of good work, and we're both sad and happy to say goodbye to the G. David Low today. Thanks very much for your work today.
Expedition 37 crew member Luca Parmitano there passing along some words of appreciation and congratulations to both the NASA and Orbital Sciences team. There you see that team up here in Dulles, Virginia. Frank Culberson back there, back behind the glass, taking a look at the team as it works. Culberson was friends with G. David Low. They were classmates together, and as we mentioned, this spacecraft bore the name of G. David Low. Former astronaut, flew several different space shuttle missions, was extremely involved in the early beginnings of the International Space Station, went on to work for Orbital Sciences, and was one of the visionaries back behind the company participating in NASA's COTS program as we tried to get these new cargo vehicles built and tested and flown.
Station Houston for cameras.
Go ahead.
Karen, if y'all are done with camera 3, we would take it to follow Cygnus.
Oh, you're welcome to it. Absolutely.
Copy, in work. And our small Siggy is going to come off the console, I guess. We've had a nice time having him here.
Well, that's sad.
We'll have to fight over who gets to take him home.
Katie Coleman there talking with Karen Nyberg about Siggy. That was the nickname of the stuffed swan that you see there up there in front of them. These consoles here in Mission Control have sort of become home to all sorts of mascots, and Katie there apparently talking to the swan. All sorts of mascots and mini rockets and things like that, just depending upon what the flight happening currently is. Cygnus, but a small dot now as it continues to open up the distance between itself and the International Space Station. The space station sort of had a bit of a traffic jam going on here lately with quite a number of the different ports and docking mechanisms housing all different sorts of vehicles. Of course, Cygnus just departed the bottom-facing side of the Harmony node. You've got several different Soyuz vehicles and Progress vehicles back on the Russian side. You have the ATV-4 back there at the back. The space station about to get a whole lot less weighty up there in space with Cygnus now departing, and then ATV-4 coming up is going to say farewell on Monday, October 28th. We'll have live coverage of that beginning at 3:45 a.m. Central Time here on NASA TV. The actual undocking of ATV-4 will occur just a few minutes later at 3:59 a.m. Central Time. So again, our live coverage at 3:45 a.m. Central with undocking at 3:59 a.m. Central Time. And then shortly thereafter, Luca Parmitano, Karen Nyberg, and Fyodor Yurchikhin getting ready to come home just a few days after that. On Sunday, November 10th, these three are due to undock from the International Space Station and come home. They spent almost 6 months up in space. But the arm now empty there on the International Space Station after having released the Cygnus vehicle at 6:31 a.m. Central Time, 7:31 a.m. Eastern Time. These two spacecraft were flying high above the Atlantic Ocean just to the east of Argentina, off the coast of South America. As we mentioned, Cygnus, first of all, went down below the station and out in front of it. It is now going to swing basically in front and up above the station, just performing a loop.
Is there any reason to not move into course for this maneuver?
You're welcome to go to course on the fly.
Copy.
МКС ЦУПу. ЦУП МКС.
Station Moscow, space to ground.
The team here in Houston reporting to the flight director that Cygnus's trajectory, its flight path, is as expected. It's nominal, as I say here in Houston. Currently, the spacecraft is more than 1,000 meters away from the International Space Station. That distance is being increased fairly rapidly. We'll keep watching until we lose the video of the vehicle. This will be the final time we see it. But as a reminder, there's 2 burns that will take place tomorrow, and that will send Cygnus down into the Earth's atmosphere where it will burn up and break up. The first one will take place at 8:06 a.m. Central Time or 9:06 a.m. Eastern Time. That will lower Cygnus's orbit and set it on its deorbit path. The final actual deorbit burn will occur a few hours later at 12:41 p.m. Central Time or 1:41 p.m. Eastern. And then break up and burn up should occur shortly thereafter. As we were talking about, it is quite a busy time for the space station with a number of different vehicles coming and going, and the crew itself. Of course, we were about to enter into November, which is going to be an incredibly busy time for the space station, and we're going to see something we haven't seen in a number of years, which is 9 people on board at one time. All of this is being done for a special guest that will arrive at the International Space Station, the Olympic Torch. Will be heading up to the orbiting complex coming up at the beginning of the month. So our order of vehicles is going to be sort of swapped a little bit. To set things up for this, your Chikin, Parmitano, and Nyberg will actually relocate their Soyuz vehicle that is currently on the Russian segment of the orbiting complex. This is being done to make way for the upcoming Soyuz that will bring up
with you on 2, Luca. Go ahead.
Mikhail Turin, Rick Mastracchio, and Koichi Wakata.
Are you guys ready for the broadcast activity?
And Luca, we are ready for the activity. We do have some words for you before you start.
Luca Parmitano there on the space station getting back to work on a number of different science experiments and other items that he's got on his schedule today along with the rest of the crew. But to talk about what's coming up November 1st, we will have live coverage of the Soyuz relocation that'll begin at 3 a.m. Central Time. The actual undocking of your Chikin, Parmitano, and Nyberg Soyuz from the Rosvet module as they get ready to move over to the Zvezda service module will occur at 3:34 a.m. Central Time. They will redock just a few short minutes later at 3:58 a.m. Central Time or 4:58 a.m. Eastern Time. So a quick little jaunt around the block in their Soyuz as they move from Rosvet over to Zvezda.
Luca, we don't think
The reason they're doing this is because the crew of Mastracchio, Wakata, and Turin are coming up. They're going to dock with Rosvet since they're going to be up there quite a bit longer. And your Chikin, Parmitano, and Nyberg are due to come home a few short days, so they're going to temporarily move over to from Rosvet over to Zvezda and allow the port on Rosvet to be opened up for the Soyuz to bring up Turin, Mastracchio, and Wakata. That launch with that crew will occur at 9. Our live coverage will begin at 9:15 p.m. Central Time on November the 6th. The actual launch itself will take place at 10:14 p.m. Central Time. And then we will return with live coverage of the actual docking activities. The coverage begins at 3:45 a.m. Central Time the next morning, so that'll technically be November the 7th. So coverage begins at 3:45 a.m. Central Time with the actual docking taking place at 4:31 a.m. Central Time. And, of course, the hatches will be opened up about an hour and a half after that. And at that point, we will have 9 crew members on board the International Space Station, which is something we don't typically see these days. But that crew of Mastracchio and Wakata and Turin will be bringing up that Olympic torch with them. There will be a spacewalk where that torch will be taken outside the International Space Station. That'll take place just a few days later on November the 9th. Oleg Kotov and Sergei Ryazanskiy will be performing that spacewalk. Our live coverage will begin on the 9th at 8 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The hatches will be opened at 8:30 a.m. Central Time on the 9th. That spacewalk will last about 6.5 hours. And then the very next day, November the 10th, as if this wasn't busy enough already, your Chikin, Parmitano, and Nyberg will say farewell. They will crawl inside their Soyuz that brought them up to the station back in May. That Soyuz that was relocated from Rosvet to Zvezda back on November the 1st. They will crawl inside and get ready to come home. Their landing will take place at 8:50 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, November 10th here in the United States. That'll be the next day on November 11th there in Kazakhstan, bright and early in the morning. We'll have several different broadcasts that night as the crew crawls in, closes the hatches, says farewell to the 6 members of Expedition 37, which will become 38 at the moment of that undocking. And then, of course, the deorbit burn and the landing. So quite a bit of activity going on here on NASA TV in the next coming weeks. Of course, for the easiest way to track all of our schedule changes and our live coverage, just log on to nasa.gov/NTV and look for the live events schedule.
And thanks for the nice work today, your whole crew.
Same to you guys. And Houston Station on 2.
Go ahead, Karen.
Is it okay? Is there any reason I can't bring the HCP back to the gem right now, or do I need to wait until the afternoon time?
I'm checking on that.
The team here is confirming that the Orbital Sciences Cygnus has exited what is known as the approach ellipsoid. This is an even larger imaginary circle around the International Space Station that really does signal the end of joint operations between the NASA team and the Orbital Sciences team. Again, NASA managers will take a look at all the different data that came from this flight, all the different milestones, the 10 milestones that Cygnus and Orbital Sciences needed to accomplish at the beginning of this mission. And then once that is complete and everything gets signed off on, Orbital Sciences will be officially finished with NASA COTS program. And that will also bring to a close NASA's Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program, which has been incredibly successful, bringing online 2 brand new United States cargo vehicles that supply the International Space Station. So Cygnus, we bid farewell to. It's been an incredibly successful mission. We look forward to the next full-up mission that Orbital Sciences will fly with the next Cygnus, which, as we mentioned, has already been packed full of cargo supplies. It is awaiting launch up of the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, and we look forward to that coming up in the next several weeks. SpaceX will follow soon after that at the beginning of the year with another Dragon mission. And then, of course, the Progress vehicles will be supplying the station over the next several months as well. We will have a look back at today's activities as Cygnus departed the International Space Station, coming up on Space Station Live. That will air here on NASA television at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on NASA TV. Of course, if you would like to take a look at what all is ahead, as we bring you live coverage of quite a bit of activity coming up over the next several weeks, with ATV departing next week. This quite adventurous schedule in November of the relocation of the Soyuz at the beginning of the month, and then the next space station crew arriving shortly after that to bring the full crew complement to 9 people. That Olympic torch arriving at the station, and then going out for a spacewalk outside by the Russian crew members, and then the departure of Karen Nyberg, Luca Parmitano, and Yurchikin. Just log on to the NASA website at nasa.gov/NTV to find out what all is ahead in terms of our programming. Of course, for all the latest on the International Space Station, just log on to www.nasa.gov/station and take a look at what's ahead for Expedition 37. We want to thank you for joining us. We want to thank you for watching along as we brought you live coverage of this quite successful Orbital Sciences Cygnus mission. We want to say congratulations to the NASA teams and the Orbital Sciences teams, and we will see you back here at 10 a.m. Central Time here on NASA TV. This is Mission Control Houston.